Hi guys, thanks for joining me. This is a quick how-to for the coaster template that I launched recently. As you can see here, there's a set that I made using the Shades of Autumn pack. And for those that are interested, the colours here are autumn green, lichen, dark brown, burnt orange, ginger, evergreen, warm brown and mustard. We're going to be making a coaster using the new template, so I'm going to quickly run through tools and equipment and materials, and then we'll hop straight into the project. Obviously you're going to need your felting surface. I'm using a foam mat underneath here, and then I've got a felted surface, and then I lay a piece of commercial felt over the top, and I swap the colours depending on what colour I'm doing for my project. I'm going to be using a contrasting fabric for this one, because as in the oak leaf tutorial, I used brown on brown and it didn't come out great on the overhead camera. So we're going all contrast today. You're going to need your felting needles. I'm using this multi-tool which has 3 needles in it, and I've got my 40 spiral and I've also got a 38 regular. I've got my fluff. I'm going to be recreating this one for you today. So I've got my warm brown and I've got some mustard coloured fluff. And for the coaster, I use 6 grams of the base wool, and then we just have a little bit to colour in whatever template or whatever design you want to do on the top. As always, my pocket scale and trifle pot. That's about everything you need. I will also probably be using a punch tool, which I haven't got to hand here. So let's start making our autumnal coaster. So the first thing I've done is weighed out my 6 grams of wool. Now, if you're making a card topper as opposed to a coaster, this is a card topper that I'm working on, and what I've used for this is 3 grams. So it's a lot thinner, and obviously this has been ironed and pressed flat. So if you're doing a card topper, you want 3 grams, or if you're doing a landscape, or there's so many things that you can do with this template. But your base layer, 3 grams seems to be a very nice card topper size. But we're doing the big one. We're going to make the coaster. So I'm going to show you how to get all of this into there, we hope. Grab your 6 grams and then roughly split it in half. It's just easier to manage. And we're going to take a piece and we're going to put it along the edge. We're going to put our edges in first. So let me move those out of the way. And I like to do this by putting the middle of this piece into that sort of bottom line. And what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm stabbing into my surface. So if you can see that. And I'm just going to go along it a couple of times just to put in that edge. But I am sticking it to my surface just a little bit. Let me get a close up there so you can see. See, they've got some tiny little fibres that are coming through. So that's what we're doing. And what that will do is, because this is quite a big template, it will have a tendency to move around. So just pinning our fibres in place is going to just help. You don't want it, attached permanently. So then what I'm going to do is grab another bit and put it down this side. And again, running down the line of that edge like so. And you want this to overlap just a little bit. And another bit. You will find it easier to turn your surface as you do this. For the purposes of camera, I'm attempting to keep it in the same place. But we'll see how that works out for me. And then lastly down this side. So what you end up with is a big mess like that. But that's okay. I'm just going to pull all of this in and just go around the edge and just bringing in those fibres to the edge. Okay, so it's just a little bit more in there. Another bit, and I'm going to stuff that in the middle. And just dot that all the way around. And what we're looking for is to build this up evenly. So I'm going to come in with my multi-tool. And what I'm doing here is I'm literally just bouncing off of my mat. I'm not driving in. Because on this kind of area, if you drive it into your surface, it will be a nightmare to get off, and pulling it off, you'll just pull away all of those fibres that you've spent so long felting. So I'm going around with my multi-tool, and I'm not felting really firmly, I'm just bringing it all down. Running around the edges. And I do recommend a good flat surface for the templates. They sit very nicely, you know, on a foam. Okay, so that's down in there a bit. Let's give it a bit of a squish, because we've still got all of this to get in there as well. All we're going to do now is keep building up and overlaying. And on the edges, I tend to let a little bit fluff out over the side. Get my single needle and just run down that edge, and it kind of pulls it back in. And then go over that edge. And you can see you're starting to build up a very nice strong edge. There we go. Then I'm gonna have to turn this. My orientation is getting off. Right, so I'm gonna come on this side. I've turned it through 90 degrees. Let it overhang the edge just a little bit, and then come down that edge. Let's get a bit closer. And then just very lightly, just maybe the first sort of, you know, 5 mil or so, just really putting in that edge. Again, light stabs. There you can see. Turn it through 90 degrees again. Another bit. And make sure obviously you pay attention to your corners. Pull it back. And again putting in that lovely edge and corner. And push, you want to, you know, make sure that this is pushed out into the corner. This template is, I think it's about 90mm, a standard size coaster. See, I can tell that I've got a little bit low there compared to here, but that's okay. We'll cover that on the next pass. So another bit. And the 6 grams is, you know, it's a guide. It's not set in stone. If you need to use a little bit more or you don't use it all, that's absolutely fine. But it's a good guide to creating a nice sort of chunky coaster. Putting in my edge here as well. Coming around that corner. So I've still got a little bit left over here, and that'll be used for sort of backfilling any thin spots. So this is still, dare I do it, attached to my surface lightly, very lightly, because we don't want the pulling away of this to distort the fibres too much. Okay, I'm going to come back in with my multi-tool now. Just pulling those fibres in towards the centre, but I'm not pulling the whole thing, just lightly pulling those fibres so that they lay coming into the template. And I'm going round with my outside needle. This is a really nice open template for multi-tools, and you can go in with a punch tool as well. Just obviously be mindful nearer the edges. If you're working on just foam, I don't recommend using a punch tool because the cluster doesn't tend to work well with foam. But these things are great. And again, just bouncing off my surface, because all I'm doing at the moment is just trying to get these fibres down inside the template. I'll put a link to this multi-tool down in the description box. It's really good. There, it's got three needles. There we go. And they're all in a straight line, which I like. The ones that have the offset needles, I tend to break a lot more. So that's just about where we're at. It's still fluffy, it's still bouncy, but it should reasonably hold its shape. So I'm going to lift very, very gently, just teasing it up like that, and then back into the template. First thing I'm going to do, re-establish my edges. And it's always sort of edges first with pretty much all of the templates. You always work outside in. Okay, let's get all those fluffy bits in there. And my corner up here isn't looking too good, so I'm going to grab a pinch, lay it over so it's fluffy outside. Just go round that corner. Tease those fibres back and go over the top. And that's put me in a much nicer corner. Okay, back in with the multi-tool. I'm being a little more vigorous, but again, I'm not driving into my surface. Lots of attention to the edges, makes them really firm. I'm going to bring in my multi-tool, my punch tool rather. Just wiggle it so it doesn't stick to the surface. And again, just being mindful of those edges. Multi-tool more for the middle, or punch tool, sorry, more for the middle, and this will really start compacting those fibres. But again, don't do that much work. It doesn't need it. The needles will do all of the work, so just lightly all over. And by the time that all of this sort of 6 grams of fibres in there, the template itself is going to be very full. And you want this to be very firm. And when you think you're done, just go over it once more for luck. But these make beautiful gifts. I know what a lot of my family are going to get for Christmas this year. Seasonal coasters. I might do a placemat one as well. Make a whole set. So there we go. And at this point, I just want to go over it and feel, see if I've got any real obvious thin bits. There's one there. I'm going to grab a pinch, and that's what this little extra bit here is for. If you've got a dip or a thin spot, when you grab your pinch, put the bulk of the fibres down in the thin spot, but you want this frizzy edge because that will just blend out into the rest of the project. If you start sort of folding it and rolling it into a ball and trying to stuff it in, you'll end up with a very distinctive line. The other thing to mention at the moment is that I've not turned my template over, I've not turned the project over. I've kept it all facing one way. And it has been my observation through doing this that the side that faces the mat comes out just a little bit nicer. Kind of retains all of the needle marks this side. The iron will take those needle marks out. We will be ironing this, but not like we do normally. But if I show you, see this side is a bit potholey, but this side is a lot more flush. Not frizzy, but it's a lot more flush. So when you're doing the leaves or petals and things like that, the side that's facing the mat is generally the one that you want facing the person. Just comes out with a slightly nicer finish. Unless you're ironing. I do like ironing, not clothes. There we go. So I'm coming back in with this punch tool again. And this is all firming up very, very nicely now. I do apologise for the enormous rattling that this tool makes, but it's great. Okay, so this is quite firm now, and I'm going over it again. So now I'm going to do something completely crazy, which I'm taking it out of the template. Get your multi-tool and just go all the way around those edges. Really sort of, you know, really good felting around those edges. Then I'm just going to go all over it. And it's going to spread, but that's okay. We now put it back into the template, and if you can see, it doesn't quite fit. And what we're going to do is stuff it and bring, see, it's kind of curling up. Get a close view of this one. So as it's curling up, just incorporate that. Nice straight needle, tiny, tiny little stabs. You get real close to this. See how this is curling up? And I'm only using the tip of my needle. And what this is doing, or has done, is it's flattened out, and then stuffing it back in the template, it's put all of the extra fibre right on the edge. And we're now just felting that down into that edge, which is going to make that edge really strong. It's going to be a lot of fibre in, you know, just in that sort of end, sort of 5mm. And because it's felted so super firm, yeah, it's really going to help hold its shape. So there we go, all over. I'm going to use the multi-tool now as opposed to the punch. And you'll feel it firming up as you do this. It's, you know, it just becomes more and more solid. Now, before it gets absolutely solid, so you've still got a little bit of bounce and stuff in it. we're going to add the detail. So it is at this point I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to go lightly all over the surface this side. If you can see, this side is it's a little fluffier than the one that we've been working on. But choose which side you want your detail. And turn it over. I'm going to go around the edges on this side as well. I'm going to go around the edges with my multi-tool. It really is all about the edges with this. So there we go. Okay. So that is actually really nice. Good and firm. Still a little bit of spring around sort of this part. And this is going to depend on what you're doing. You may be doing a scene, you could be doing absolutely anything. So this is just a plain coaster. Right, back in the template we go. And I'm going to be using the medium beech leaf template. And there are lots of templates that will fit in your coaster. The autumnal set that you saw earlier were all of the medium sizes, I think, of the ivy, the holly, the beech and the oak. I think there was a small holly there as well. Sneak peek at a new template. So we're going to be doing the beech leaf, and I'm going to be using the mustard colour. And this, I'll probably use this to do the veins and stuff. There's no real weights and measure with the leaf. It is just pulling off bits. And start off with just a thin sort of frizzy bit. And much like the outer template, we're going to go around those edges first. Now we're looking to have a block of colour, but we don't want it raised too much from the surface. We want to keep it very much flat and thin as possible. Otherwise, when you put a cup of tea down, it's going to fall off. So just decide where you want your leaf and lay down just a very thin covering. And then we just add in a little bit more. But you can always add more. A little bit more difficult to take it away. So there we go. Like so. And especially with the autumn leaves, you can go nuts with the colours and the variations and just the altogether loveliness that is autumn. There's a little bit more. As you can see, the edges are really coming in now. But thin wisps of fibre. And build it up very, very lightly. so. So I'm going to put a little bit more in just here. I do apologise if the overhead camera is a little bit out of focus at times. I've had to set it to a manual focus so it doesn't autofocus, as it was having a fit. So, but hopefully it has got everything you need to see what I'm doing here. So there we go. There's my little leaf. I'm not going to block out this colour completely because I think the variation in it actually looks quite nice. Really, really light stabs when laying this fibre down. You don't want to come out the bottom, because if you do, all that's going to happen is you're going to drive those yellow fibres out the bottom. So, punch tool, and this is so light, again, so it's not to come out the bottom. It doesn't feel like the tool's doing anything, but it is. This is so light. That's how much I'm going in to my project. I'm not pushing it past any resistance whatsoever. There we go. I'm going to add a little stalk down at the bottom. So I'm just going to roll that up and then come down. I'm getting close. Just come down 2 sides. Decide where you want that to end. And then just let this frizz blend back up into the rest of the leaf. And it just puts a little leafy stalk on it. Lightly over with the multi-tool to bring it in. Then I'm going to go lightly over with the multi-tool over the whole thing. There we go. Okay, so my leaf's in. I want to put in some little veins to make it look more leafy. Let's see, what colours have I got? I'm going to use the same colour as the base, just because it's to hand. But when you want to put in some veins, on a lot of my leaves, I draw them on with Sharpie, which is incredibly time saving. But I've actually no idea what Sharpie would do, especially when it's on hot cups and things. So you're going to pull off just a little bit and then roll it into a thin sort of vein. Decide where your vein's going to start and just stab up and down in that spot. And what that will do is just anchor the fibres in place. To get a lovely straight line, you're going to roll it and lay it down and then stab along the line. Roll it, lay it down and stab along the line. And again, very light stabs. And when you get to the top, just snip it off and felt those end fibres in. And that's how you get a really nice crisp. Let's go close up. Nice straight line. And to put in the little veins, it's exactly the same. You just want a thin bit, roll it. I'm going to go from the middle and then take that up that way, and take that one up that way. Another little pinch. And, you know, don't be afraid to cut these down. So I'm just going to hold that, get closer, hold that open. There we go. Got some fluffy there, so I'm just going to snip that off. Go all over it with my punch tool. You can just lay one piece down straight out from the centre each time. I'm doing this for a little bit of speed as well, so. And just a little one in at the top, just to finish it off. There we go. Obviously you spend as much time on the decorating, but a lot of the other templates will fit on the coaster. There's a steampunk set, for example, which has got a really nice top hat and cog and moustache and things, and you know, they would make for a great set as well. Okay, so this is pretty much finished. Just check your edges again. You can never felt the edges too much. At least I found that. There we go. All that's left to do now is a very light iron, and normally what we would do is put pressure on it, get the air out, make things beautifully thin, but we don't want to take the chunk out of this thickness. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have a nice hot steamy iron, and we're just going to glide it over the surface, which will bring in all of any fluffy bits. It'll help cover up any of those needle marks, and it will just give it a nicer finish for a coaster. So I'm going to go grab the iron, we're going to iron it, and then we'll finish it off. To iron the coaster, as I mentioned before, we just want to be gliding the iron over the surface because we want to retain that thickness as obviously a sort of a heat absorber. So I've got my iron right up high and it's steaming away. So all we're going to do now is just glide the iron over the top really lightly, just letting some of that steam penetrate the surface, but we're not taking any of the thickness out, so we're not putting any pressure on it. Flip it over. Lightly glide over the surface, and you can see it just helps take those needle marks out. So I'm up on full steam. And there we go. That's all we need to do for the ironing part. As you can see, it's still nice and thick. Now if you were doing the bookmark, you will have used sort of 3 grams of wool, and when you come to the ironing part of this, you would be pressure, and that would be it, because we want to make this, you know, nice and thin. You can see the difference in those two. So if you're doing the bookmark, you want to put some pressure on it so it makes your bookmark really nice and flat. When you're doing the coaster, just lightly glide over the surface because we're just giving it a bit of a steam. Once you've ironed, the last thing that I'm going to do is I just like to take a pair of scissors and just trim off if anything is, you know, really frizzy. In fact, you could possibly, when your iron is upright, just rub the edges of the coaster on the side of the iron. I've not tried that, so maybe I will. But there, it just neatens it up, and there's your finished coaster. I almost have a matching pair. So lots and lots of versatility with the coaster. Like I said, there's going to be more projects coming with it. You can make your card toppers. You know, there's so much that you can do with this, and I really am looking forward to seeing some of your designs. Thank you very much for spending your time with me today. I hope you have enjoyed this little tutorial. Please do subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon, that will notify you when I upload more videos. All of the products, along with more product information and weights and measures, all of that stuff can be found on the website, which is www.mumsmakery.co.uk. Once again, thank you very much, and I wish you all a very crafty day.